Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central. So if you saw the video that we did a couple of days ago talking about the big meta shift that's happened in contenders, then you would have spotted that I said that Hammond has actually had a good amount of playtime in the pro scene. Also at this point he is in our own ranked games, he's now been unlocked in competitive, so we can all play him now. So today I wanted to go over some sort of VODs I suppose and how the pros have been playing him, and what kind of advice you could take from that into your own games when you play him. In the analysis stage, we're actually not going to be looking at the contenders games all that much. No, in fact, we're going to be looking at a show match between Australia and Hong Kong. First of all, there's a lot more tape of Trill playing Hammond that we saw, and also teams that, essentially ran Hammond a lot of the time in contenders ended up losing those series. You saw teams like Philadelphia Fusion University running Hammond to begin with, like Beast Halo, but because of new Sombra and the strategies that the teams have been playing, it completely disables what he wants to do. That's a topic for another time. But I want to talk about where Hammond thrives, and you can easily see that in the Hong Kong-Australia show match and what comps he's useful against. So you have been watching some contenders gameplay in the background, but let's go and check out what this show match was like. So the first thing that I really want to highlight is the compositions that he's been used against. Australia did struggle a lot playing into Team Hong Kong's Ghost Comp. Now for those who don't know what Ghost Comp is, it's a composition that sort of basically is quad tank, but it has the Brigitte instead of a Roadhog, and it's all based around, sustain, stunning targets, and then just mowing them down very quickly. It has Reinhardt, D.Va, Zarya, and then the free supports of Lucia, Moira, and Brigitte. It's a composition that was infamous of being essentially cheese, because it's very easy to implement. You just run as a 6, just run at the enemy and just mow them down, or get onto the point and basically go, haha guys, you gotta try and move us, and that's not easy, because we're all pretty fat people. And this happened a lot to Australia, especially in the early matches. The first map was Rialto, Hammond wasn't picked up, and then Australia had a pretty horrible time playing against Hong Kong on the Horizon. So they decided, screw this, let's bring out the Hammond. So the main focus was to try and actually counter Goats Comp, or at least to be less susceptible to being killed by Goats Comp by running the Hammond, because of the amazing mobility that Hammond has. So that's compositions that Hammond was used against, i.e. the Goats Comp, but was also pretty useful against Dive with an Ana, which was interesting that Hong Kong ran, which we'll go over in a second. But now I want to go over the compositions that he was used in, more specifically what slot in the team Hammond took up. Now one strategy that's been highlighted a lot that I really want to go over again in another video is triple dive, which would be Winston, D.Va and Hammond all being the tanks of the squad, all diving onto targets, but that wasn't used at all in this game. No, actually, in fact, Hammond was used as the main tank slot in Australia's lineup. They took out the Winston and they put in a Hammond instead. And now this makes a lot of sense when you look at it. Hammond isn't a main tank. He can be used in that slot simply because Winston is very susceptible to what I was saying about Goats Comp. His shield gets absolutely slaughtered. He does have a movement ability to get out there, but other than that, he is a pretty stacked target that can get killed fairly easily. If he dives into the enemy team, he gets taken out. Diving away, he can't contest an objective. He can't lead by example and be the first person in engagements for his team. And that's basically what a main tank's there to do, right? For the most part anyway, is to dive onto targets first and be the tip of the spear as teams are pushing in. Now, unfortunately, Trill had zero success with that with the Winston because of Goats Comp and how it works. So instead, we saw him switch up from stuff like Reinhardt that we saw in Control Center that was really struggling against Goats Comp to a very high mobility, very flexible Hammond. Now, you're sort of having a look at the gameplay in the background and you're seeing how fluid Trill is moving around the map. He's not really sort of coming out of his ball form an awful lot. He's not really actually doing a lot of damage in some cases. He's just making sure that he can get good grapple hooks on and actually tear through the team by just disrupting them and knocking them apart, which is another main job for a main tank. So that's why Hammond works well in this slot. He's going to get his ass kicked less by Winston, has the mobility to get both in and out of fights fairly easily and quickly that Goats Comp can't really catch him up, and also he's amazing at disrupting the enemy team and the backline by jumping in on people. So they're the compositions that Hammond has been used in. He's been used as a main tank in this lineup. There have been a few changes as this map has gone on, but Trill has always been playing this Hammond in this position. And the compositions that he's mostly been used against was Hong Kong's Goats Comp, and it does force Hong Kong to change up their strategy because Goats is fairly universal and flexible across different game modes and maps, that it shows that it was working because Hong Kong had to switch to something else. But now I want to go over each of the abilities and how Trill managed to make effective use out of them. We'll start with the Grapple Hook, as that's one of the main bits of bread and butter for Hammond, and we did actually see Trill using it a lot to, swing up into the air and power drive onto the team. Now, in fact, looking at the Lijiang Tower Garden stage, you can see right here, Trill is a good example of just being out of the fight enough, keeping effective distance away from Goat's Company, doesn't get killed, but still putting out some damage, and he's just buying his time. He'll either sit there in his quadruped form, or he's going to roll up into a ball and just tear through targets as he sees fit. Now, that's a perfect example. He's going to grapple onto something fairly low and just sort of swing at targets, alienate them from the rest of their team, and just try and sort of knock them down. We haven't seen him power driver yet, but here's a good example of that being used, knocking up almost the entirety of the Hong Kong squad whilst Yuki comes in with a barrage and just sort of tears people through. Now, here's another good example to sort of highlight is the effective use of the shield. Whilst Trill died, he does tend to use his shield fairly late in fights. Regardless of how many enemies are around him, he uses his shield fairly late on. Remember that the shield gets stronger the more enemies that you're close to. If you're not close to any enemies at all, you want to get 100 extra shield using your ability, but you're with the whole enemy team, you get 700 because it's 100 per player that you're near. Another good example of the ultimate comes out here. He can see that Goat's Comp is coming through this area, so decides to swing in, use his shield, and also use his ultimate to zone out Hong Kong, and this whole push is sort of dispersed by them by being able to spot out where this ability would be really good. Now, it's going to be very difficult to work out where effectively the ultimate is going to be great use, but that's going to be a case-by-case basis that you'll have to learn as you're playing him. But I do want to take a little bit of a detour to Horizon Lunar Colony, as there have been some really useful tidbits of information that you can use when running Hammond yourself. So this was the first bit of gameplay of Hammond that we saw throughout the day. It was the second map that's been played, and as you're seeing in the top right, Hong Kong actually had a really good time on pushing Horizon with 5 minutes still left on the clock, and this is what I mean about patient play with Trill on the Hammond. Uses it to swing up into the air, pile drives. It doesn't actually kill anybody or have anybody killed by the rest of his team, but it does force the whole of Hong Kong to just back off this high ground, which means that Australia can take full control of it, and from here the fight is fairly easy for Australia to win. Again, Trill isn't constantly in the backline of Hong Kong. He's not trying to play it that way. He's just been really patient, waiting for his abilities, trying to find targets to power drive and move up in the air. But as soon as it's unsuccessful or he gets discarded, he decides to back up, let the rest of his team do his job, and he's just waiting for opportunities for his team to push in. But he does create enough space and presence that it gives Huss on the Widowmaker enough time to use the high ground to make enough space, and really from there Hong Kong dissipate off the point completely, and it's fairly easy for Australia to take. And that all started from a Hammond play, going up on the high ground and forcing Hong Kong to back up. But there is a really good play that I did want to highlight from Trill, using his ultimate and how it wants to be used. So again, Trill goes in on this right hand side to completely disrupt Mua or Murray on the Widowmaker, forces him to be rather aggressive. So Trill decides to actually plant his bomb down. Now that the Valkyrie Mercy and the Widowmaker have come into this side room, the Diva goes in to try and help and gets demech'd, and watch this, Trill actually swings and knocks the baby Diva into the mines, oh no, but it does completely force the Hong Kong's Widowmaker away from the rest of the fight. She can't get on through simply because Trill's there to sort of cause a lot of pressure, and the bombs are there too, so it's very difficult to just swing out and try and get free. And in that time, Huss actually takes out the Widowmaker in that fight, and that's where Australia managed to win out, with not some amazing hand-to play from CKM. But that's just a really good example of using Hammond's kit to absolutely zone out the Widowmaker, which you do counter quite a bit in some of these engagements. It's some pretty interesting stuff. I would recommend watching the whole VOD from Full Circle, which you can find in the description below. I hope you sort of learned something from this, how Hammond can be used by the pro scene. I wonder how much it's going to be used in the playoffs for contenders and the World Cup retrospectively, so I'm very excited to see how this new hero gets played. So if you're interested in all of that, do let me know in the comments below. We may go over some more stuff as we see more strategies coming out. But thanks for watching, take care, we'll see you next time.